This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
When was the last time you felt inspired? Are you ready to take your passions to make a difference while living a life you truly love? Your host, Katana Abbott, who is a life and legacy wealth coach and certified financial planner, searches the world to bring you experts in the field of personal and professional growth, wealth creation, and mind, body, and spirit. So grab a cup of coffee and take that quantum leap you've been waiting for. Smart Women Talk Radio, the link to live with purpose, passion, and prosperity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smart Women Talk. And I want to welcome you to where I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors, thought leaders, and change agents who are on that leading edge. So we interview people about money, business, health, inspiration, and the metaphysical. Today, I'm really excited to be continuing this concept of writing your next chapter, living your next chapter, but we're also going to tie legacy into it. So I'm interviewing legacy coach Joanna Klein about how to go deep into your wisdom, where you can find your life stories. And these stories, they have the power to teach, to inspire, and to heal both yourself and your loved ones. So we'll talk about why your stories and your life really do matter, and not just to you, but to others, and why there's no better time than now to be writing your stories, and why you don't even have to be a writer to do this. So I've invited Joanna Klein. I want to tell you a little bit about her. She is an international speaker, a writer, an educator, and she knows the power of owning your personal story. At the age of 65, she was divorced 3 times, had no income stream, and was beginning to believe that the best years were behind her. So instead of spiraling downward, she found a way to transform her life and positively move forward. She started her own business. She met the love of her life, and she began to genuinely accept and believe in herself for the first time. She now shares her proven techniques and processes, helping women celebrate their stories of joy, strength, courage, and resilience, and leave a legacy of wisdom for those future generations. So, Joanna, welcome to Smart Women Talk. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Katana. It's great to be here.
Pardon?
Yeah, we're talking about saying names, and all of a sudden it just kind of like blup. Okay, there we go.
I know. Katana, Joanna.
Right. Yeah,
our names are so important too to us, aren't they?
Yes.
They reflect who we are.
They do. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and it's funny too. It's like sometimes the notion of, all right, well, I want to get this right. I want to make sure I'm saying it right, even though I've been saying it right every time we talk, yet, then it kind of like, okay, let it come out now. And then we can trip ourselves up. So we'll be getting into that when we're talking later.
Yeah, that is interesting too. When someone really doesn't pronounce your name right, it kind of is jolting. So, talking about people, I just want to share with everyone that our last show, we had Sherry Clark. She's a midlife courage coach here. And we actually met through Sherry. And it shows how important these connections are that we all have.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, Joanna, tell us a little bit. I shared in the opening when I shared your bio, I shared a little bit about your story, but we always love to hear from our guests. Was there a pivotal moment? Was there a triggering event? Was there something that, caused you to step into this new field?
Yeah, definitely. So as as you said, I was going through my third divorce, and it was a time when I was looking back, and all I could see, I was just beating myself up for the mistakes that I'd made in my life. And I was seeing my soon-to-be ex-husband on Facebook with a much younger woman, showing how happy he was. And I was looking at my life and thinking, this is not, I don't see anything ahead. I wasn't looking forward to the next chapter. So I was meditating one day and have surrounded myself with books on the meditation, around my meditation pillow. And there was one that jumped out at me that I had not picked up before. And I can't remember whether I got it as a gift or someone had recommended it. I don't even know how it was there, but you know how the universe just kind of works that way where when we're ready for the message, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And the book was When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. And so I was just drawn to grab it and pick it up, and I opened it up, and what stood out for me was the paragraph where the words were, "Your life has been a good teacher and a good friend." And something in that jolted me. It was like that moment of, this is time to turn things around, turn my thinking around. I was in that victim mode, where everyone else is wrong. My life has not gone well, and I couldn't see the positive. And so I was like, stop it, basically saying to myself, let's take another look. And so I started doing some writing at that point and started connecting with my stories. And like journaling, emotions, when we journal, our emotions are very ripe and real, and we're in the present when we're journaling. When we do life story writing, it's more reflective. So oftentimes it can start off with the venting, but there was something in me that was saying, dive deeper. What's the lesson here? What is it that I have to learn from this? And it was from that process that I began to see how I was the common denominator in my 3 divorces. And what was it that I was seeking that wasn't, it was like I was looking outside of myself to fill myself up, and I became aware of that. And so this process of, even though I've been through therapy, know the whole thing about we're responsible for our own happiness, it was the process of writing these different stories and connecting the dots that started helping me see my life from a new perspective and give me the desire to keep going, and inspired me to start looking at my life from that victor perspective. Like, where have I have had an incredible life. Let's focus on that instead of what's been wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about lessons, but there's also a gift.
Yes.
And it's so hard when we look at like a bad experience, but it seems, and to say, find the gift in that bad experience, but we have to go, like you said, go deep, right?
Yes.
And look for that gift. Have you had that kind of thing happen before, where you've gone back and you've done the writing, and then where you've had a terrible experience and not only said, okay, I found the lesson, but you looked at it and said, well, it really was a gift. Can you give us an example of that, or even for someone else you've worked with?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I can give it for myself and also for my clients. Because that's really the crux of the program that I've created, Journey to Legacy, is to write these stories, but look for that wisdom. Certainly look for the joy, and also look for those lessons, because the expression, when one door closes, another one opens. So what is it? What did the horrible experience have to teach us? And I can share a personal one. In 2008, when the market crashed, my husband and I were heavily invested in real estate, and we lost all of our wealth at that point. And at the time, it was devastating. I mean, it tore our marriage apart. But in the writing, I was able to see how humbling that experience was. I was able to appreciate life in a whole new way, and I became aware of how materialistic I was and how invested I was in this, this certain kind of what success represented. And that, I wouldn't change that for the world. I mean, I call that my dark night of the soul, but it opened me up in a way that allowed me to start showing up more authentically and to, to make the mistakes and to be okay with those mistakes and not feel like I have to be perfect and appear to the world as perfect all the time.
And it's funny you say that too, because I'm in a couple mastermind, classes where they have mastermind sessions. And in one of them I'm in, I have my coach, my business coach, and I have two of my clients. And I thought, what did I do to myself? Because, I have to look perfect in front of these people, right? And I just decided, no, I'm going to use this as a learning tool for myself and get the support I need. And it's wonderful when women can do this. I have a question for you. Do you think it's easier for women to do this than for men to do this when they get together?
My program is for women at this point, but I have connected with men who have shown interest. And in fact, my own partner, Matthew, does some of this processing himself as well. So I think it's powerful for both men and women. We all are carrying stories from our past, and just like the optical illusion, for those of you who might remember or have seen it, about there's a image of some people see the old woman and some people see the young woman in the picture. There's another one with an urn or profile of two people. And our stories are like that. There is another perspective in all of our stories. And so when we're able to find that other perspective, particularly when they are stories of pain or shame or guilt, and that's carrying us, by getting them out of our head and onto the paper, it can be like this huge load taken over. So yes, I've seen it happen for men, and definitely I see it because of my group happening for women.
So the people that you're inviting to do this, okay, and just for all of our listeners, what is the purpose of doing this? Is it sometimes just the purpose is to help you discover who you are, your purpose, and why you're here and what you want to be doing, or healing? Or are people doing this for other business purposes? Are they trying to create some kind of memoir? I mean, what is the purpose of writing your life story?
Yeah, that's a great question. Originally, when the idea came to me, I thought the purpose was primarily legacy. And one of the things that happened that was an inspiration for me to do this online course was that my older sister, who's 5 years older, contacted me. It was 5 years ago, and said she had just found out she only had 3 months to live, and she had had a rare form of uterine cancer, and she died the day after her son's wedding. And then a few years later, he and his wife had a little girl. And it was so clear to me that if we don't write our stories, they're going to die with us. So there's so much value in sharing in letting those who follow know who we are. I only knew one of my grandparents. The other three had passed away by the time I was born. My father's mother died when he was only 5 months old during the Spanish flu. She was a nurse, and she passed away. And then his father died when he was 16. So I know very little about my ancestors. And struggling with identity has been something that I have dealt with all my life, is that self-love, self-esteem, knowing who I am. And there are studies that show that kids who know who they are, know their family story, are better, well-adjusted in school. They do better socially, academically. And it makes such sense. It's like we know our story, and there's a pride in the story, even if there's been ups and downs. There's still this sense of, well, this is who we are. So that was the original intent. But as I started to develop the program, so the original intent was to be able to share these stories that you really connect with our.
Are you saying to capture the stories from our loved ones so that we can pass those stories on? Because I wanted to ask you about that, because the holidays are coming up for those that are, listening live. And I just think it's a terrific way to open the conversation up with loved ones.
Absolutely, it is. So it's primarily writing our own stories because we know our stories better than anyone else. But certainly it's a great time to pull in the stories from our parents or grandparents if they are still alive, because you get those down so that you can pass that on.
We have one left in our family. She's 80, over 80 now. Of all of them, the aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas are just one. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to get with her and get her story. And I'm encouraging everybody listening to go to their loved ones and take your iPhone and just capture those stories. So, and there's actually a website called legacystories.org, and they've got an app. They've got like tools and an app. So you can actually store the stories right there with the ancestors, and then they can all access them and stuff. So, there are great tools out because of our great technology today. We're so lucky.
We are so lucky. We definitely are. Yeah, and as you're talking to them and interviewing them, go deeper in the stories, because there's a lot of like different writing prompts out there that say like, who was your best friend and what was your first car, and those are fun, but it's like that knowing about the challenges, the kinds of things that we were talking about just before of what were you able to overcome? What happened for you that initially devastated you but turned out to be a blessing? Or, what do you feel proudest about? And gaining those kinds of tips are really important.
And one of the things I wanted to share that I thought was a neat idea is to grab some old pictures, and especially with someone that's older, snap a photograph on your iPhone, like take a picture of the picture and then give them the picture and say, tell me about what was happening in your life back then, in this picture, tell me about it. And they could be a little child, they could be a teenager next to their car, but that could get them going. Because I know I took my mother when she had dementia. She was living in assisted living, and I took her to the house she had just lived in with my stepfather. She did not recognize it. Then I took her to the house she lived in with my grandmother before she married him. Did not recognize it. Then I took her to the home we all grew up in for a period of the house before that. Did not recognize it. We started driving down John R. towards 8 Mile because she, that's where she grew up, was at 8 Mile in John R. And as we're pulling down there, she just changed, even though the buildings are gone, a lot of them, right? And as we turned in the street, she said, Katana, this is my street. This is where I grew up. And that's where my house was. And it was torn down, but she told me all about her house and who lived here. And so isn't that amazing? That amazing. Going there, it brought, all of a sudden, she didn't have dementia.
That's incredible.
So, I'm saying, even if someone has dementia, maybe you can spark that and get those, getting those stories, because I think it is so important. And the apps on our phone can really be helpful.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And it generates such great conversation too. Once you start talking to family members about stories, and people are going to have a very different memory of the exact same situation. So be prepared for that when you start having those conversations. But it just opens up more connection with family. The other thing too, like tying in with this notion of the next chapter of our lives, because I know what was so true for me in going through this process. When you ask about like, why do this? What has turned out to be so powerful, because women who are doing this not everyone has kids or grandkids or whatever, but it's the connecting the dots about our life. It's the finding the meaning and the golden thread that connects what it is that has been meaningful in our life, and finding those joys and finding those things that sparked us, like adventure. We love adventure, so we can look at our past to give us clues of how we want to live our future and to inspire us. And so it can be so powerful once we start that writing process to remember who we are, to come back to what our truth is, and then use that to inspire us in seeing what it is that we're still longing for, or still want to add to our bucket list, or still want to do ahead.
So tell us more about that, because that was interesting. So a lot of the women listening today, they are looking at this next chapter. We have, I think we've had a decade now of baby boomers turning 65. And we have all these boomers that are moving into this. And we're also doing the show, we're in the middle of COVID. You mentioned the Spanish War, isn't that ironic? But we're here in this period of COVID. And so it's not just the boomers that are looking at their next chapter. I've read people are hiking the Appalachian Trail. They're selling their home and moving into a motorhome and working remotely from a motorhome. Younger people, they don't have any of the constraints that we had. So it's not just going to be the midlife people looking for their next chapter. It seems like everybody's looking for their next chapter. Mm-hmm. So how can this writing process help all of us who are listening, get information to help us with this next chapter in our life?
I like to think of the writing process as like putting the pieces together of a puzzle. So you get a box, a puzzle, you open it up, let it all fall down on the table, and some of the pieces are up, some of the pieces are down, some of the pieces are sideways, and so we start grabbing the ones that grab it, that we feel an affinity to, something that we resonate with, or we look shiny when I write about that. So starting just with that process of like a memory and going, putting it together, writing it, and then going to another, that can lead to another memory, that can lead to another piece of inspiration, or talking with family members and writing about something that comes out of those conversations. And before you know it, the puzzle starts taking a shape, it starts taking a form. And from that, it's like, oh, wait, I'm seeing some patterns in my life. I'm seeing some, and as I'm writing, I'm remembering some really fun things that I did. And now that's triggering in me the desire to do something like that, or brings up some longing of what it is that I've missed. Or maybe something that's getting in the way of our joy. Maybe we're carrying, I know a number of women in my program have had issues, challenging relationships with their father. And so the process of writing helps bring closure, so we're not carrying this with us. And as soon as we bring closure to something, then we've opened ourselves up for something new as well.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. Okay, I like that. So what about someone who is listening and they're thinking about this? Have you had an experience where someone has done the writing and then they have gotten that aha moment like you did, and they realized what it is they want to do in their next chapter? And, have you seen them like working in the next chapter, or have they kept in touch with you? Do you have a story about how the writing process has actually helped them get information to move forward with confidence?
I think the biggest thing that, theme, if it was going to be a theme of the women who have done my program that I hear, is that recognition that my life matters. I am someone. I don't have to put others on a pedestal. It's that self-appreciation and self-pride. And once we're at that point where we're not being intimidated by what others are doing, then it opens us up to do whatever we're feeling like doing. So that's the biggest theme. And most of the women who have done my program so far are in their 60s and 70s, a few in their 50s, and are looking at, how can I embrace, who it is that I've been so far. And so that's the consistent theme, is that self-love that comes out of it. And once you're there, then it opens you up for any possibility.
Right.
For me, it was realizing I've always wanted to be with a successful man. I loved people. I loved the idea of entrepreneurs. So I looked for entrepreneurs, and then it dawned on me, well, I can be an entrepreneur through my process of writing. It's like, I can be the entrepreneur. I can start my own program. So, that's an example.
Well, that's huge right there, isn't it? That you became an entrepreneur yourself because you were looking for the entrepreneur. You gave that gift to yourself. Mm-hmm. And then you were able to attract someone that could support you in what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
And also just probably admire you for what you're doing.
Yeah, to admire myself, to feel proud myself. Yes. I guess for to get to a place of the self-acceptance, and being able to that confidence that I can do something like that's big. I mean, I'm planning a backpacking trip right now. It's going to be the first time I've ever been out in the wilderness on a backpacking trip, because I connected with the fact that I loved adventure through my life story writing. And, I'm seeing, the other women who are in my program are finding one of them has recognized that she's got this passion, and just so many values and beliefs around helping those with attention deficit disorder. She's been a teacher, and what's come out of her writing is that she wants to do something about that, and she wants to have a bigger calling. Another woman in my program who's a successful businesswoman and entered into writing, wasn't sure why, but was called to it, and now she's realizing she's got great wisdom to share with other women about how to navigate life successfully. She's done a great job of it, and she didn't see that she could make that. She wasn't recognizing the worthiness of her stories from a perspective of how she could share that with others. There's universal truth in all of our stories. And when we're able to connect to that universal truth, then we're able to connect with other people. And we may not be able to connect with everyone, but we can certainly connect with someone. And that's the point of story writing, of our life story writing, is connecting with what's our truth, and what's the universal truth that can connect us with others.
Okay, so does someone need to be a writer or have had a writing class background, or what do you need to get started? And can you give us some tips, like for our listeners, like what can they do to do this, to get started writing themselves, and what does it take?
So no, you do not have to be a writer. I wasn't a writer. Many of the women who come to my program have said, I don't see myself as a writer. It doesn't mean that you don't have to feel like you're writing a book that's going to be published. So it's more looking at your own process. We all have our own processes of writing. So it's really the desire to connect the dots, put your puzzle pieces together in such a way that you feel good and know who you are. And then just doing it and allowing a variety of ways to get inspired. One way is, like you said, picking up pictures, showing it to certainly showing it to your parents or grandparents or loved ones, but looking at the picture yourself and seeing what's the story in this picture. That can serve as a tool of inspiration. There's plenty of books out there that are memoir writing books, and I tend to stay away from the term memoir because it feels a little intimidating. It feels more like publication kind of thing. I like to call it life story writing. But there's plenty of books out there, programs where I think group programs can be very inspirational. I see the women in my groups who inspire each other when they share their stories. It's risky to let yourself be seen. And so taking that step and sharing it, and then realizing that you're inspiring others just because you've shared your story. There's, finding that truth that connects us all and opens us up. So you get inspired when you're part of a group, having some guide and mentor to help you see the other perspectives when you're feeling stuck or when you're telling yourself, I'm not very good at this. So that can be that can definitely be something that can help you. So it depends on whether you consider yourself a self-starter and you can do this yourself. Some people say, well, I journal, so I've been doing that for years, but it's different.
So what's different? Because then I was going to ask you that. What's different between journaling and what you're talking about when you're writing your life story? I mean,
journaling tends to be very much in the present. So how we're feeling right now. And it's difficult to have perspective when you're in the present. With life story writing, you've got this time in between, and you've been able to develop some wisdom and experience. And so it's that opportunity to see the other perspective. You're going in with the plan to, mine the gold in that story. What is the universal truth in here? What's meaningful to me? What can I learn about myself? What can I get back to? What can I find about my truth?
Yeah, so important. One of the exercises I have people do is break their life up into decades. And year 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 20 to, going on for their whole life. And to who, what was happening. And Sherry and I talked about this a little bit, but what was happening in your early life, 1 to 10. She does it, I think, more like over 30 years, or leaves it more open or something. But what was happening when you were young, and then 10 till 20. Who were the people that were in your life? And what was the theme? What were some of the lessons and the challenges? And I think when we do something like that and we can get it down on paper, this is what I found is I did that for myself. And, at 6 years old, my father died, right? Then that age from 10 to 20, I had this evil stepfather that was so abusive. So that was, living through that thing. And so then, I started going through that. And what I found is that, I had to find the gift in my father's passing and accept it, that I couldn't change it. And that perhaps these things happened to me because I was supposed to help other women. And so here I am today, it seems like from the probably age 40, I started focusing on women, and it was because I realized what happened to me back then, that was a lesson for me. And it was a passion to never be a victim myself, of financial abuse or abuse period, and to help other women. And so I went into financial planning. And so now I've tied it all together with helping women and financial planning and this whole idea of your next act, that's all tied together. So have you had anyone use doing these life stories to really come into their present now and then really restructure their life in a way that was just so inspirational and transformative for them?
So yes, and starting with the exercise, for example, because I have a variety of exercises, but something similar to yours in terms of a life outline. I invite people to take a piece of paper, draw a line on the left that's vertical, and then from the middle out a horizontal line, and that connecting point is birth. And think of important events that occurred as best as chronological as you can, and anything that brings a feeling like a warm fuzzy feeling, put it above that horizontal line, and anything that brings up a more painful feeling that felt like it was experience of loss or shame or guilt, put it below the line. And so notice kind of the trends in your life as you're taking a look at that life outline. And then, choosing different ones, start maybe with the joyful, because sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable to go into the harder, the more painful ones, but start with the joyful one and write about that. And just to add, for those of you watching, that you'll notice, I think typically as you write, it might spur an idea to write about something else. So, have a little notepad with you where you can just write down that additional story so you can try to stay focused on the one story you're writing about. Or if you're that free spirit and you just want to go off with it, let yourself do that, but just be prepared. But anyway, let that inspire you to write. And then when you're ready, kind of dip into the more uncomfortable ones and dive they're always asking, just like you did, Katana. It's like, why does it flow off my mouth? What is the lesson here? What is the what is it what's another perspective? What did I gain from this? What's the silver lining in this? So
it's interesting you said that with the graph, because I told you I was listening to, after interviewing Ken Dykewald, I purchased his book. They sent me the book, Radical Curiosity, which is his memoir, and which is absolutely one of the best books I've read. I mean, I love it. And he did that. He started working with seniors, with elders. And that's one of the exercises that he talked about. And I didn't really get it when he was talking about it in the book, but now I get what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And he said that they would write this, but then they would share. And they had so many breakthroughs from doing those exercises, but then sharing them. Yeah. So I think that's part of the power of this, is not just doing it by yourself, but being able to have someone to share that with, because maybe the process of not just writing, but then talking and getting reaction can affirm you and help you go farther with it. I mean, I could just feel it right now of, oh yeah, I get that, right? And someone can get more confidence and more direction in their life that way.
That's exactly the word that I was going to use. It's affirming. And when a group of women get together and are sharing their story and are affirming each other, and also triggering each other to remember certain things themselves. I mean, I think the best example of that is the Me Too movement. That when someone spoke their truth and other women started speaking their truth, and this huge weight got lifted off the shoulders of the women who were able to say, this happened to me. And when we're writing our stories, and if we're thinking about sharing what it is we're writing, we always get to know that we're in charge of what it is that we're going to share, that we don't have to share everything, but the process of writing it can bring that clarity. It can be healing just to get it out on paper, and then we decide what it is that we want to share. There's a book that Martha Beck has come out with recently called The Way to Integrity, or The Way of Integrity. And she talks about how when we're born, we're born our natural self, we're who we are. It's nature, right? It's this, we show up in the world, but then we spend the rest of our life trying to fit into society and please people, and culture has an influence, and we end up giving up our true nature so often in trying to meet society's demands. And what I think is so powerful when we're writing our stories from this reflective standpoint is that we continue to see where our true nature is. We continue to connect with our truth. And so we're finding that that becomes so empowering as we uncover that and recognize where culture was influencing, where we were trying to please others. I think that comes out a lot in the writings of the women in my group, is recognizing that people pleaser part of ourselves, where we were bending over to be something for somebody else and giving up our true self. So it's more than, oh yeah, this is, even though there are some people who have like this epiphany, like this is what I'm meant to do, just like the woman who is now wanting to heal others, help others with attention deficit disorder challenges. The biggest piece for all of us in it is just that getting back to who we truly are and owning that, and then choosing what it is we want to share with others. We always have that choice.
So, okay, for everyone listening now, I'd like you to share, how can they get started doing something like this? And because we really want to touch this theme of the next chapter. And so when I was thinking of the decades exercise and you were talking about your graph, one of the things that came to mind is that for both of these ways, for writing your next chapter, can't we just continue the decades forward? And now we can dream with what we've learned about our true self and our passions and our purpose and what we want to leave, because our life we lead is the legacy we leave. Can we use that to write those future chapters? Have you done that, or does it sound exciting? I thought that's something I do want to do.
Yes, definitely. It's part of what I do in the program. Like the last month of the 6-month program is like looking forward. What is it we want? And I heard a great exercise. If you were to give advice to yourself 10 years ago, like what is it that you wish you had done 10 years ago? And now think 10 years ahead, looking back, what is it that you're going to regret that you didn't do? Thinking of it from that perspective, because like, oh, okay, I can see if I regret something from the past. Well, now, like, what is it that I don't want to regret ahead of me? So from that, thinking of it that way. An answer to your question in terms of how can people get going.
Yeah.
There's a variety of programs available for their memoir writing courses if people want to go about it that direction, life story writing classes, their memoir books to help people who feel that are self-starters. I've got a starter kit that is included in the article that I provided to you and is on my website if people want to go to journeytolegacy.com and get the starter kit that way. And there are you can find inspiration in your pictures. You can find inspiration in family heirlooms, or maybe you're holding on to some things that a relative that has died and you're holding on to it, but you can't really use it. You can take a picture of that and write the story about what's sentimental about that. So there's a variety of there's inspiration is all around us, and allowing ourselves to go back into our memories and just start the process can really open up the floodgates of like, oh, one thing leads to another, and to another.
Well, by the way, I love your URL, the Journey to Legacy.
Thank you.
You're lucky you got that.
Thank you.
It's very nice. But now you capture my attention on what you just said. So what is this kit that you have, and where can people go to get it?
So they can get it at my website, Journey to Legacy. There is a little pop-up there where they can sign up and get the starter kit, and that helps them get going. Like, why is it they're doing it, and gives them some opportunity to get some inspiration and some guidance in getting the stories out of our heads and onto the page.
So, and for those that might be interested in doing a class with a group like you're talking about, do you have another class coming up at some point? Are they virtual? Are you doing anything like I remember us talking about retreats?
Yeah. I do a virtual class. The next one, I do it twice a year and take up to about 12 women at a time. And it's a 6-month class, and where there's a variety of teaching sessions that I do, kind of inspiration sessions, as well as where we meet on a regular basis and share our stories. And I've created a membership website where you can log in and write your stories and add pictures, and then bring your own creativity to it by choosing cover designs and internal page design, and actually create your masterpiece right there on the website. It's all set up. I couldn't find anything that existed like it, so I needed to create it, because
oh my goodness,
so many of my clients feel technically challenged, and so I've totally simplified the process so it's extremely user friendly, where everything is there for them. So even to the point of organizing the stories and creating dedication pages and intro pages and automated table of contents. So it's all right there for them. But what's in addition, there's lots of writing prompts. And with each of my writing prompts, I've got deeper questions, because I want to invite people to go into that deeper meaning. And so that can inspire them to write further on and get to what's really ultimately that blessings, the lessons, the joys, the gold nuggets in all of our stories.
Yeah. And I love that. There was something at the beginning that the power to teach, inspire, and heal. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is, and I had just written something like that today in my journal. Isn't that amazing? But that's really what people will be doing when they start looking at their life differently. It has been so wonderful having you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really a joy, and I love what you're doing. So it's such a gift.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really inspiring to have you showing women how, in a very simple way, they can look back at their life and release any of the regrets and understand and find the gifts, and then use that to create the next chapter in their life of why they're here and what they want their legacy to be. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So everyone, thank you for being here today as we continue with these wonderful inspirational interviews. Come to joinsmartwomen.com and you can join the Smart Women's Empowerment community, get our newsletter, and know who's going to be our guest. But you also get free access to the Smart Women's Academy with all kinds of wonderful resources and free courses. So thank you for being here today, and we look forward to our next time we connect. And until that time, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.
Thank you for joining us here at Smart Women Talk Radio, a place to learn, prosper, and grow. Tune in again next week for another exciting episode of Smart Women on the CTR Network. And remember to live with purpose, passion, and prosperity.